All right. So for centuries, really, science has been all about looking out there, right? At the stars, at cells, at atoms. But what happens when that super powerful scientific lens turns around and points inward to study the very thing that's, well, doing the looking?
And that quote it nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this kind of weird, strange loop we're in. We've mapped just about everything we can point a telescope or a microscope at. So now, the final frontier, it isn't out there. It's in here.
I mean, that's the central paradox of all of neuroscience, right? The brain is studying the brain. We're using the tool to analyze the tool itself. We're using our own consciousness to try and figure out what consciousness is. And this is exactly where things start to get really, really interesting. It's where the old rigid rules of science start to bend a little. So, to really get why this is such a mind-bender, we first have to give credit where it's due. We have to look at how far we've come with the traditional approach. For, decades now, the game plan has been to treat the brain like a super complex machine, something you can take apart piece by piece to see how it works.
And honestly, we've learned an absolute ton doing this. We can map its physical structure, the neurons, the white and gray matter. We get its physiology, the electrical signals zapping around, the synapses firing. We even understand its chemistry, all those neurotransmitters you hear about, like dopamine and serotonin. We can literally point to a spot and say, that part's involved in memory, or this area helps with language. It's what we call the third-person view of the brain, and it is incredibly powerful. But, and this is a huge but, it might not be the whole story.
Because here's the catch. This whole approach, it has a built-in blind spot. The very logic, the reasoning we're using to understand the brain, is a product of the brain itself. And as you're about to see, that creates some pretty fundamental limits.
Okay, so check this out. Our brains are basically survival machines, right? Their number one job for millennia has been to keep us alive, and to do that, they have to simplify things fast. They take this messy, complex 3D reality we live in, and they flatten it into these neat 2D cognitive models. So a whole spectrum of human identity gets squashed into simple boxes, like us versus them. A massive, interconnected web of causes and effects gets boiled down to a simple, linear A causes B story. It's like we're trying to navigate a real, vibrant, high-def world using a super-pixelated 8-bit map.
And this isn't just a philosophical idea. You see this playing out in actual research. Let's take a classic example from neuroscience, studying the brain's white matter. You can think of white matter as all the wiring, the cables that connect the different parts of the brain.
So here's that A causes B logic in action. A researcher sees damage to one of these wires, and then they notice the patient loses a specific function, say something to do with language. The conclusion? Aha! This wire must be the language wire. It's clean, it's logical, and it's been a cornerstone of research for a long time. But it basically treats the brain like it's a simple circuit board from an old radio.
But what if that's totally wrong? What if the brain isn't a simple circuit board? What if it's a dynamic, self-organizing network? What if damaging one pathway doesn't just snip a wire, but instead forces the entire network to reroute and reorganize itself? Suddenly, the problem isn't just the broken part anymore. It's about how the whole system responds to the damage. And that one simple question, man, it changes the entire game. And this leads us right to the edge of what we know, to the biggest, deepest challenges in all of neuroscience. Some people call them the unbridgeable gaps. These are the places where our neat, tidy, A causes B logic just completely falls apart.
Okay, gap number one. You've probably heard of this one. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. It goes like this. How do a bunch of chemical signals like dopamine zinging around in your brain become the actual feeling of happiness? We can measure every last molecule of dopamine, we can track every electrical signal, but none of that data, none of it, ever explains the experience of joy. There's this massive leap from the physical stuff to the subjective feeling, and honestly, we have no idea how to bridge it. Then there's the second gap. Think about your laptop. It processes tons of information, right? But there's no one inside the laptop who's aware of it. There's no I experiencing the code run. So why is our brain different? How does all that information processing in our heads create an observer, a unified you who is aware of it all? Where does that sense of self come from? It's like the ghost in the machine. And the third gap, this one might be the deepest of all. Our entire scientific model describes a brain as this isolated 3-pound organ sitting inside a skull.
a biological machine separate from everything else. And yet, for all of human history, across every culture, people report these profound experiences of connection, of deep meaning, even of oneness with the universe. So, where does that fit into our model of an isolated machine? It just doesn't.
So, okay, it's pretty clear our current model has some major limits. It really struggles with these huge gaps. And that has led some pretty brilliant people to suggest, hey, maybe we need a totally new way of thinking about this, a radical shift. For more than 100 years, the core assumption of neuroscience has been this: the brain is a factory. It takes in raw materials, sensory data, chemicals, and through its incredible complexity, it produces consciousness. That's been the bedrock idea. But what if that entire premise is just wrong?
What if it's not a factory at all? What if it's more like a radio? This is the huge paradigm shift. What if consciousness isn't produced by the brain? What if the brain is just an incredibly sophisticated receiver, an antenna that tunes into a signal that's already out there, all around us? Think about it. The music isn't created inside the radio. The radio just picks it up and makes it audible.
So in this receiver model, the brain isn't a creator, it's a filter, or a translator. It takes this vast fundamental consciousness, this unmanifested reality, and it narrows it down, translating it into the limited, biological, individual experience of being you. And in this model, brain damage doesn't destroy consciousness, it just messes with the receiver. It breaks the tuner, maybe, changing the station you're hearing or just giving you static.
Now, just think about this for a second. If this model is even a little bit right, the implications are massive. It means the whole focus of research has to change, because suddenly the most important data you could possibly study might not be found in a lab. Look, science is built on what we call third-person data, things you can see, measure, and replicate, like fMRI scans or neurotransmitter levels. It's objective. But it has always struggled with first-person data, a gut feeling, a sudden aha moment, a flash of pure inspiration. And here's the beautiful irony. The only direct, absolute proof any of us have that consciousness even exists is our own first-person subjective experience of it, the one thing our scientific tools can't actually measure.
And just think about the history of great discoveries. Where do they happen? Archimedes yelling Eureka? In a bathtub. Newton figuring out gravity while just chilling under a tree. The biggest breakthroughs so often don't happen when someone is hunched over a desk forcing it. They happen in these moments of relaxation, on a walk, in the shower, when the logical, analytical mind finally quiets down and lets something else come through.
And this quote just says it all. Inspiration is not manufactured. It is allowed to enter. That is the receiver model in a nutshell. We don't create our best ideas from scratch. We create the conditions to receive them. It's like our brain is the radio, and we have to learn how to tune it to the right frequency. The real work isn't in manufacturing the song, it's in finding the station.
So this brings our whole conversation full circle, right back to where we started. The researcher is the object. Because if the brain really is an interface, a receiver, then the deepest truths aren't just out there in some distant galaxy or a complicated equation. They're in here, waiting to be accessed. The answer that you're looking for might just be inside the one who's looking. This turns the whole quest for knowledge on its head. It means the final frontier for discovery isn't just in a laboratory, it's inside you. And maybe, just maybe, our search to understand the universe is actually the universe's way of trying to understand itself, through us.